This is Duke University.
You write monthly pieces for the international version of the New York Times and talk about Turkish politics, contemporary Islam. And one of the items that I had read in one of your columns was very intriguing. Sometimes Turkish politics is framed in terms of going back to Ataturk's legacy of this somewhat dogmatic model of secularism, which isn't so much the separation of church and state, it's more the French laïcité kind of version. But you've actually, I think, made the argument that it's not so much Ataturk's legacy and sliding away from that, it's actually kind of replacing one cult of personality with another. Can you talk a little bit about what this cult of personality with respect to Recep Tayyip Erdogan has looked like and where you think it's headed now?
Sure, very good point, Omid. I mean, people sometimes tell you, oh, Turkey's moving away from Ataturk's legacy and that's why everything's going bad. And I have respect for Ataturk's legacy on certain grounds, but I have a problem with authoritarianism. And Ataturk's legacy was authoritarian in its own way. It was secular nationalist authoritarianism with a deified leader you couldn't question. Now we are having a different version of that, a not secular but more pro-Islamic, not hardcore Islamist. Erdogan doesn't want to bring Sharia law, at least not talking about that. But he wants to use more religion in public square, that's for sure. But the thing is that Erdogan has become lately the second Ataturk who, like the first one, cannot be questioned. He is the embodiment of the nation. His opponents are traitors to the nation. They're just not normal people. They're spies for foreign governments and they want to destabilize Turkey. And even Erdogan consciously created a symbolism for this. When he was starting the election campaign in 2014, he said, I'm starting from Samsun, the historic city Ataturk started his war of liberation. And he said this is the second war of liberation. And
who is the country being liberated from?
Well, in 1919, the country was really, after World War I, was really under occupation. And
right.
I give Ataturk that. He really initiated a war of liberation and he led that successfully. That was war.
And today?
Erdogan's enemies are, because according to the latest ideology of the AKP, Erdogan's political opponents are not normal people. They are spies, Zionists, crypto, Jews, Freemasons, something that is not authentic. They are serving the powers of the big global demons. And the pro-Erdogan media pumps this ideology almost every day, very aggressive in ways, and that has been my main breakup with the AKP concept, I mean, I can say, in the past 2 or 3 years. Right before the elections, Erdogan's media put up a whole page, one of the newspapers, Crusaders. All non-Erdogan politicians are actually an alliance of crusaders.
You know, there's this kind of meta-narrative that goes on about the compatibility of capital I Islam and capital D democracy. And I think one of the things I appreciate about your perspective is that you help break it down into much smaller and more manageable forms of apparatus, elections, journalism, freedom of speech, political freedom. Tell me, where do you see this Turkish experiment in a country that's overwhelmingly Muslim and in some ways one of the few bright spots of political culture within this part of the world? Where do you think democratically things are succeeding and where are they struggling, maybe even failing?
Well, regarding that issue with capital letters, in my book, Islam Without Extremes, I try to actually focus on the matter of individual freedom, liberty, religious liberty, freedom from religion, those kind of issues, which are sometimes troublesome when it comes to this grand matter. Whereas elections, they're accepted by almost all people who even claim to be Islamists. I mean, actually elections are demanded by Islamists. Sometimes they're not given by the secular autocrats in the Arab world. But democracy is a whole, of course, set of ideas. And it is inevitable that it might have some nuances according to the culture too. I give them that. And, but there are, I think, fundamental issues of human rights, religious freedom, the right to be pious or not pious or be an apostate. You know, these are kind of, I think, some touchy issues. And Islamic world needs to discuss these, I think. And to think that we accept elections, democracy is over, that's not that simple. When we come to Turkey, though, our democratic experience has not been really challenged that much by Sharia law, if that's the thing people have in mind, because we don't have Sharia law in Turkey since 1920s. Even under the Ottoman Empire, much of the aspects of Sharia that clashed with constitutional liberalism were actually rendered obsolete by the state. There was no apostasy ban in the late Ottoman Empire. There was no corporal punishment left anymore. They were all replaced by more modern laws because it was assumed that the state, the Islamic state, had the right to bring in secular laws. Throughout the Republican period, I think the main problem has been authoritarianism of the state. And that is not an Islamic problem. That's a universal problem. That is a Putin problem in Russia. That's a Chinese problem in China. And what Turkey experienced was that we have had free and fair elections since 1946. And I think that's a great blessing. Many Arab nations didn't have that. Just only recently with the Arab Springs, some of them experienced that. So the ordinary Turk realized that if you don't like a government, you can go and change it at the ballots by voting. That is maybe one reason that we never had a violent jihadi organization which wants to fight the state. The Islamist-minded people, or just pious Muslims who just want more religious freedom, they just voted. They brought parties like the AKP to power. However, electoral democracy doesn't exactly mean full liberal democracy. When you come to freedom of speech, when you come to freedom of the press, when you come the right of assembly, protests, Turkey has had a lot of limitations. And there were times of reform, so you have some openings and move forward. And initial years of the AKP was like that. But then when the government thinks that there are demonous enemies out there, and the governments always believe that in Turkey for some reason, then they say we cannot allow these people to do their conspiracies because they are trying to undermine us. They cling on to this very authoritarian nature of the state. So I think if you ask me, what is the problem? Well, it is the authoritarian state and the authoritarian political culture. Is it coming from Islam? In my view, no, not necessarily. But it influences the pious people in Turkey as it influences the sometimes secular people in Turkey who don't allow Kurdish rights or other minority rights.